What is going on, man? Today I'm going to answer a question I got recently from a guy who I was talking to. He was actually a friend of mine, and I was giving him a book recommendation, and he asked me, Patrick, how do you take notes in books? Because he noticed that one of the books I was recommending to him had a lot of writing in it. So today I thought I'd take the time out to kind of let you know how I take notes in books. That way I can take any key concept or any key lesson that I get from any book and really ingrain it further into my head, into my habits, into just who I am in general. So I have two books in my book bag that I just happen to carry with me today, that while I'm making videos, that I wanted to use as examples to show you how I take notes in them. So as I'm getting these books out, one thing that I do want to show you or point out is the fact that I always have books with me wherever I go. Now, do I always read books wherever I go? Not quite, but I always want to have a book on hand, just in case I get about 5 to 10 minutes to sit down and really just bang out a few pages because, like this book says, there are no rules to life. You live your own life. On that note, let's jump right in. So obviously in this book, you can already see that I have a lot of notes on the front cover. And then even on the next page, I just got a lot of fucking notes with page numbers. So the way I do this is, as I'm reading through a book, I will set a timer, all right? Now this is a little mind hack, productivity hack, is I set a huge timer. It looks like a fucking bomb counting down, and I'll just set it to like 30 minutes or something. I try to read a book for at least 30 minutes at a time and just set it right on the desk in sight, and then click start so it's counting down from 30 minutes. That way I know that in that 30 minutes I have to get as much reading done as possible, and just having that timer there for whatever reason mentally just keeps me focused and keeps me not from procrastinating while I'm reading. So that's one thing. And while I'm reading this, if I'm going through, you can see I have underlined passage right here. I maybe even put a star if I like it so much. But what I personally do is if I read something that I like, I'm just gonna underline it, right? So here's another one. I underline it. So this one says, cynicism is unhealthy, optimism is helpful and desirable, but blind, stubborn, unwarranted optimism is stupid. Ooh, that was just poetic genius. So I underlined it, and I even liked it so much that I put a star next to it. Now, I don't always put stars next to things, but here's another thing. If I just like an entire paragraph, instead of underlining the whole paragraph, I'll just bracket it. And then what I'll do, going back to the front, is if something's noteworthy, if something that I can tell that I want to be able to refer back to easily in a future date, then I'll make note of it in the front. So one example that I'll give you here is a story I read about Donald Trump. Now, I'm not talking your opinions on Donald Trump or politics. And in fact, this book was written way before we knew Donald Trump was gonna ever try to run a country. But Donald Trump has a really cool story in this book, and I'll read it to you. So it's one paragraph. He said, a much repeated joke originated by a Trump insider reveals how some close to him feel about his ego. Trump is in an elevator. Just as the doors are about to close, a young, gorgeous, curvaceous woman slips in. She says, I know you. You're Donald Trump, one of the richest men in the world. We're alone in this elevator right here, right now. I could strip naked and we could have wild, spontaneous, passionate animal sex. Trump thinks about this and then asks, but what's in it for me? A Trump associate told me the unsanitized version of that joke with great glee. Now, I thought that was a pretty badass story about Trump, so what did I do? I not only bracketed that paragraph, but in the front, I wrote, page 40, Donald Trump story with hot girl on elevator. And I've used that story many times in newsletters, in products, in speeches, in seminars. I've told that story as an example of a high-value man disqualifying a hot girl, just the importance of disqualifying. But the great thing about stories is that you can take any story and pull out just little nuggets, and it could be multiple different nuggets, just depends on what direction you want to take that story into. So right there in that story, I talk about the importance of disqualifying girls. Maybe you could also talk about how high value men are pursued by hot women, or how most women out there are just gold diggers, especially when you got Donald Trump money, all right? There's a lot of different points that I could prove with the story, but regardless, I thought the story was good enough to make note in the front. So another example, Ogilvy on Advertising. It's another book I'm reading. I'm not very far in it, but it's just the same kind of shit. So right here you can see I underlined a little passage, and then what I did right here is I wrote my own little summary in my own words about what I got from that passage. So these are just some ways that I take notes in books. Now, how do I take it one step further? Yes, I'm underlining, I'm starring, I'm bracketing in the book, and then I'm making note of what the shit I really like in the front of the book, but how do I take it one step further? And that goes down to keeping a daily journal. Every single morning and every single night, I'm going to journal of some sort. Maybe I'll make another video about how I journal and what I write in my journal and what I write at the morning and how that differs from what I write at night. But every single night, I'm going to make note of a few lessons that I learned throughout the day. And if I'm constantly improving and if I'm constantly learning by reading books every single day, there's always going to be one nugget that I can make note of in my journal. So for example, if I read something in this advertising book, this book about copywriting and sales and marketing, if I get a little gold nugget from reading that day, that night, after I've written it down in the front of the book, I'm also going to summarize it in a few sentences in my journal before I go to bed. And that just kind of ingrains it even further. And if you want to take it another step further, maybe even write an action step about how you're going to apply that to something that you're doing in your life right now. Because as we all know, very successful people use speed of implementation. If they learn something, they immediately implement it into their life and then get results from that. And if it doesn't work, then they cut that lesson out as a lesson that failed, or they keep trying it until they get the results that they want. And on that note, I hope you liked this video. I hope you got a lot of value out of how I personally read books, and I hope that you can immediately apply this stuff into your own life today, because that's one of my goals for all these videos, is to give you actionable advice to make you the most charismatic, confident, and courageous version of yourself. And if you truly want that for yourself, and if you really want to join the movement of guys who are on that journey right now and currently achieving things that they really want to by being charismatic and learning these tools every single day, click that link below, join the daily VIP email newsletter, and I will see you in the next video.
Okay.